Paradise and Missing You. Missing You might be on. It's a British one, so you'll love that because you have those British ties with your hubby who let himself lose the accent. I'll never get over it.
I don't even understand.
Why would he do that?
He purged it. He
Girl,
purged
that's
it.
grounds for divorce. I'm gonna marry you. Gonna marry somebody from
saying.
London, and you gonna lose your accent?
Lost it. And when I tell you, his mother, nephews, nieces, sister, brother, every other one of them except him has a beautiful British accent. And this brother sounds like he's from Queens. Tres, dos, uno, bang.
A bang bang.
A bang bang.
We are punch drunk from stress.
I mean, legit. Legit.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Read This, Read That. I am Jackie Reed.
I'm what's left of Joy Ann Reed. Actually, I'm just Ann Reed because the joy
is gone.
It's gone.
Girl.
Ega Wodum. Big up, big up, big
up. How are you? Oh, my God. Wait, I know. I already know how you are.
Look how big my glass and how full it is.
Oh, my God.
That's how I am.
You got that Scandal glass from back in the day. Remember that big glass that they had on Scandal? That's like that.
What's so sad is, I literally bought these glasses because of that. I bought it when I was a Scandal fanatic, and there's only one left because, my family be breaking all my stuff. So this is the last one standing. We love her. She's all that's left.
I know. Cherish her.
Cheers, girl. Cheers. Clink, clink,
Cheers,
clink.
Girl. Clink, clink.
Cheers, clink.
Clink.
What are you drinking?
I got this non-sparkling hemp-infused lemonade. Not non-sparkling. No, it's sparkling. Non-alcoholic, hemp-infused lemonade, which is delicious, with a little bit of the orange bitters that I love. So it's like a little mocktail. It's delicious. Okay.
Very cute.
Yes, yes.
Yes, I have security. My new favorite drink.
Now, who mixed your security today? Did you?
I mixed it myself. And I think I got the proportions just a little off. I think it's got maybe a little too much cognac.
That's okay.
It's a little cognac-y, but I'm down with it. I'm down with the cause.
Yeah, you need to be. I almost had like real liquor today. It was all I could do. Sometimes I have to talk myself down and just say, okay.
I know. I feel so sorry for people who did dry January. I don't know how they made it through it.
It was a rough month. It was a rough month. But before we get into the past days under this man, let's wind down and talk about something amazing that when I talked to you this week, I was like, don't tell me. I want to hear it on the podcast. Save it. You, my dear, went to Sundance for the first time. I talked to some friends of mine, and it is confirmed there were Joy Ann Reed spottings. People were trying to get into your event and could not. So tell me everything.
Yes. So Jason and I went to Sundance. It was a hoot. We had a really great time. It is not my first time being in Utah. When we were kids, my mom used to do all these road trips. So we rode through Utah when I was a kid through Salt Lake City. So this was my second time being in Utah, but actually first time properly really visiting Utah. So we're in Park City. It was awesome. So I was there to speak on at a panel for something called MPAC, which is the Muslim PAC. And it's MPAC Hollywood. And what they do is they try to influence the way that Muslims are portrayed in Hollywood, to say that, don't portray all the Muslims as terrorists. You can put a few doctors, lawyers, and, different things in there. Yeah. And so that's what they do. And they really work with Hollywood producers and studios to try to change the way the image is sort of crafted. And so I was asked by a friend, Naira Hawk, who sometimes on my show, you probably all have seen her on my show, former State Department spokeswoman. And she had made this connection. So we went. And so since we were going, since I was going to go anyway, I, of course, invited Jason if he wanted to come along. We were like, you know what, this would be a great opportunity for us to work on making some contacts and connections to try to fundraise for this documentary that we're doing. We're doing this documentary about the assassination of Medgar Evers that Jason and I are co-directing with the documentary group. And so we were like, you know what? And we had a contact who said, if you come out here, She actually lives in Park City. She was like, I will get you meetings. So come a few days early instead of just doing your panel, and let's take some meetings. So we took a bunch of meetings for the doc. We ran into some old friends. We, made some great connections, reconnections. And I just enjoyed it. Now, what we didn't do was see a single film. Not one. But we did a lot of like fun stuff, right? We went to Roy Wood Jr.'s got a new film out called Love Brooklyn. We went to the party and little like panel for that. That was really fun. We went to it was sort of like a get together for the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. Prime Minister Ardern. There's a documentary about her that her husband actually partly shot the footage for. Like they met and he was taking all this behind the scenes footage of his girlfriend becoming prime minister. And then so it became a documentary apparently that's really good. There's a bunch of really great docs. There's a documentary called The Perfect Neighbor that is about the story we covered on the readout about the Black woman who was shot through the door by a white woman in Florida because she went to try to retrieve her children's iPad and find out why this woman was racially harassing her children. There's a documentary about that's there. So we found out about a lot of fantastic docs. I pretty much like pre-booked the next like 2 months of my show just on people that we met that are going to be great guests for the readout, and just met a lot of cool people and ran into a lot of fun fans while we were in Park City. And there were a lot more Blacks than you would expect.
I love that. I love that. What's it like there? I mean, because I think Salt Lake City, I think skiing, I think snow. Are people like, what are you wearing? Are you walking around in very casual snow boots? Are you dressed to the nines when you show up? Or is it like, what's it like?
So it's Park City. Salt Lake City, we didn't actually get to.
Well,
but
Park City,
Park City is about, I would say, like half an hour away from Salt Lake City. So it's very similar. It basically looks like an old Wild West town. If you actually physically look at Park City, and we will put up some pictures here for the fans here of the Read This, Read That. It basically looks like an old mining town from the 1800s. It's very old fashioned. It's very charming. All around it are the Wasatch Mountains, which when we first got there, we're like, is this the Black Hills? Because they're like black, and they're full of snow and they're beautiful everywhere you look. It's one of the things I miss about living out in the West. I grew up obviously in Colorado, and in Denver, you can always see the mountains no matter where you are, which is one of the beautiful things about Denver. This place, Park City, is the same. Everywhere around you are these beautiful peaks and mountains. And it's just gorgeous. It's quaint. It's charming. And so when I got there, of course, our first little meeting, of course, I had to go put on my little high heel boots, trying to be cute, toddling around, uncomfortable. And by the time we left this meeting, we stopped into a little store and I bought me some snow boots. And so people are super casual. Even the parties you go to, no one's really dressy. Everybody's dressed down, casual, cool. And so a lot of the stuff I was wearing was, you have to get a parka. You got to have a hat. It is cold. My little baldy head would have been so cold. So you just have to wear a fur hat not fur. It's faux fur. Faux fur hat so that Jackie wouldn't get me because it was faux. But I had my little faux fur hat and I had my little warm bubble coat, and you just have to bubble coat it out and keep it moving. I have jeans, sweaters.
Ooh, I love it.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. So will you go again? Are you like, I need to go every year to this?
Every year. Now that I've seen it, and we were there the first week when it's really hectic. It's every place you go. So MPAC took over a restaurant. And so what a lot of organizations like them, and even some, studios will do is they'll literally take over a restaurant or a hotel and just take the whole thing over and they turned it into something called Muslim House. But when they leave, it'll go back to being the restaurant. So all of these like sort of Sundance things take over the town. And so you can see ski lifts above you, but the things in town are all related to movies, right? Or they're showing movies in all the theaters. And so the whole town is sort of taken over by this kind of Hollywood crowd. It's a very conservative state, so apparently they don't love it. And there's a lot of controversy over whether it's going to remain in Park City or remain in Utah at all, because it stands out as this very blue state kind of event that takes place in a very red state. And Park City is this little blue dot and I think Park City and Salt Lake City are blue, but Utah is very red. So one of the things I will also say is that one of the disturbing things that we heard, there was a gentleman who was Navajo, who was one of our Uber drivers one day. And was one of our drivers one day. And he told us that Navajo people who are numerous and native to Utah are being harassed by ICE. That ICE is basically entering, their spaces where they're supposed to be safe, their school, businesses, and demanding to see what's called this blood identity card, where they have to prove that they are Native American and not, Mexican or foreign. And it's crazy because you're thinking the colonizers are harassing the actual indigenous natives of this country and of Utah. And so it's like, wow, and I was just watching American Primeval, which like made it even seep in even harder because it takes place in Utah, and you see the sort of Mormon conquest of Utah and them taking it from the native people. And you really realize that, colonization is violent. It's violent, it's ugly, it's racist, and it causes the people who stole the land to question the presence of the natives of the land. When you get to that level, we gone too far.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's unfortunate, but it's the story of this country, right? And so many other places around the world, but it is the ugly history of this country. I can't.
So that's my wind down. Yes, tell me about your week.
Well, I had an interesting week because I can't give the details of who I was working for, but I shot a bit of a commercial for a car company. Yes.
Cuz
it'll be a digital ad. I'm always finding something interesting to get into.
Always. Always. You are an adventure. Your presence is an adventure. Do tell.
My presence is a present. So I went to Louisville, Kentucky, and Kentucky is my old stomping grounds because I used to work in Lexington, Kentucky. And when I was in Lexington, which is a much smaller town than Louisville, Kentucky, if you can believe it, going to Louisville was going to the big city. That was big living. That was like, oh my God, look at wow. It was, going. So anyway, I haven't been back there in a long time, but they really rolled out the red carpet for me. It was such a lovely experience. It was myself and a few other women who are entrepreneurs, Black women. And this car company, I can't wait to talk about it, is celebrating Black women at a time when that's really not happening.
Yeah.
And so we were out. It was so cold in Kentucky at the day that we had to take off our coats and walk and open the car door and get in and out and do all these things as if it was not cold.
Right.
They were removing snow behind us and everything, but we had a really cool crew. The woman that brought us in, she is the owner of this Black marketing company. I don't want to get into those. I'll tell you when I can show the commercial and everything.
Sure.
But it is so cool. So we did that outside with the car. Then we did this panel discussion with this, a real panel discussion in front of this organization, but the production company recorded it for the commercial. The same ladies that were getting in and out of the car, we had this panel discussion and I moderated about Black women entrepreneurs getting our start. And it was part of this organization called the WPO, and it's the Women's Presidents Organization, which your company, if I am correct, has to have made at least $1 million in order to even qualify to become a member of this company. So it was interesting to mix and mingle with this crowd of, professional women, all, with their own companies. Got a lot of great advice, great networking, and made a little commercial. I mean, it was cute. It was fun.
I love it.
A lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, the ladies and I that were on this panel together, like we just connected. We have this whole sisterhood now. We're all going to stay in touch. It was fun because when we got there, we had to get dressed. I came straight from the airport because, of course, I was the last one to arrive in town, and my flight was delayed. And when I got there, they had this RV camper out in front of the hotel where we were shooting. And that's where we would change and get ready for everything. And I was just the last one, but it all worked out. It was great. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait to see it myself, but to show it to you so everybody can see.
That is, dare I say, DEI. We love it. That is awesome.
Hopefully I'll get a car out of it. Let's see.
Listen, they need to give you a car. Exactly.
That would be amazing. It would be amazing. Yeah. So that was my interesting week. And then, my birthday was this week.
And happy birthday to cousin sister Sora friend Jackie Reed. Now that you're 30, what are you going to be able to do in your 30s?
Well, now that I can legally drive and vote and do all those things and drink, now that I'm an adult,
now that you're a grown up,
now that I'm a grown up, you know, it's like I traveled to Louisville and then I came back the day before my birthday. Then it was my birthday. And then the very next day, I had to give this big speech for Founders Day at a local chapter of Delta Sigma Theta here in the Atlanta area, the Decatur Alumni Chapter, which is the chapter where my mother was made. So it was really cool to do all that. But for my birthday, I was planning to go and see Wicked and then go out to dinner. And I changed my mind and I decided to just stay home and rot. Have you heard of that? This whole thing that the young people do.
Did you say stay home and rot? I thought I heard rot.
There is this thing, and I'm watching our intern Lauren to see if she knows about this. She's laughing and saying, "Yes, rotting is a thing."
Rot. So
R-O-T. R-O-T-T-I-N-G, girl, rotting. It's what we would call vegging, right? It's just when you just are in the bed, pajamas on, no agenda, you're watching TV or scrolling on your phone. You are, there's no showering involved. It's like there are people on social media that will tell you how to properly rot and get things done that you need to get done. It's a whole thing. It is a whole thing that young people do. What?
We were talking about this before we started that, pretty much I've spent the day talking to sources, still doing my job that I never stopped doing. I guess I was rotting because up until about an hour before this, when I finally said, let me take a shower and look like a human before I go down for this podcast, I was literally in bed. I literally was doing everything from my bed, prop myself up. Lovely, wonderful Jason was kind enough to make me a cup of coffee. And I sat there with my coffee and my phone, updating my social media and talking to sources and making phone calls. And I guess I was rotting.
Yes, rotting is really no commitment to anything. It's like you don't commit to breakfast. You don't commit to coffee. You don't commit to hydrating your body inside or out. It's like this whole thing. People will tell you, okay, if you're going to rot today, here's what you do. From 7 a.m. to 9, relax. At 9 a.m., get up and drink a glass of water, right? And then from 9 to 10, watch something on TV, read a book, do this, and then you need to eat something at noon or at 1. It's like they have guides to how to rot.
What?
Yes, I'm telling you, it's a whole thing. So I rotted for my birthday.
These young people got all these plans and schemes, and
they will give something. They will brand everything. Girl,
everything.
What was vegging for us is now rotting. And let me tell you what I watched though.
Yes,
so I watched the new series on Hulu starring Sterling K. Brown called Paradise.
Okay.
Where he is a Secret Service agent. A murder happens. It's a whodunit. Baby, it is so good and crazy. It is just, you have to watch this because we are rooting for everybody Black. And because it is starring him, that should be reason enough. But when I tell you it is good, it is so good.
Oh, well, now that I've done, it took me 4 years to watch The Good Fight. So I won't wait 4 years now. I will just believe you.
Yes, Paradise and Missing You. Missing You might be on. It's a British one, so you'll love that because you have those British ties with your hubby who let himself lose the accent. I'll never get over it.
I don't even understand.
Why would he do that?
He purged it. He purged
it. Grounds for divorce. I'm gonna marry you. Gonna marry somebody from London, and you gonna lose your accent.
Lost it. And when I tell you, his mother, nephews, nieces, sister, brother, every other one of them except him has a beautiful British accent, and this brother sounds like he's from Queens. But I mean, I think God knew what they were doing because if he had a British accent, we would have 10 children.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I'm saying?
That is true.
We would have 10 children.
God knew.
And I could barely deal with 3 children. We would have 10
beautiful babies.
10. I love a British accent. The only accent that rivals how great a British accent is Jamaican accent. And he's also Jamaican and doesn't have one of those either.
Don't have that either.
He can do it. He can do a Jamaican accent.
No, but he
But
needs to have it. That
we need
needs
to have
to
it.
be the
Those are the
accent.
two best accents in the world. And I will argue, I'm going to say 1, 2, and 3. First, I love the British accent, not in order. I love the Jamaican accent. I just love the way Jamaican people talk. I just think
Yeah.
it's so charming and fun. The other accent that I really love is I love the Haitian accent much more than I like
Really?
a French accent.
Because of the French
But their
influence?
accent is better. They took that French accent and improved it greatly. I think the way that Haitian people speak especially when they speak English is
Mhm.
beautiful. Like it sounds much better than when when Americans or English or anybody speak English. I love a Haitian accent. I think it's just mellifluous. It sounds like music. It's beautiful.
You know what accent I truly, truly love when it is like when they are deep in that dialect? Girl, New Orleans.
Oh, I love
I
it.
love a New
Love
Orleans
it.
accent. I love it
Love it.
so
Love
much.
it. And you just want to tell them, pronounce this thing. And then they pronounce it and they think they're pronouncing it. And it's so different. I love a New
Yeah.
Orleans
Say
accent.
this word. Say that
Yeah.
word. I
Say
love it.
this word. Okay, now here's while we're on accents, what do you think is the best sounding Southern accent? Because they're all slightly different.
Oh, girl, Atlanta with
See,
no T,
people love the
no
Georgia
second
accent.
T. Atlanta.
I would say the Georgia accent is the accent that people stereotype as a Southern accent. Hey, baby, it's like so pleasant and it sounds so nice and it's the friendliest sounding accent. But I
Or
would say
that's the white Georgia accent.
that's the white Georgia. Okay, give me the black. What's the black Georgia accent? I think it's the same. It's not the same.
Girl, nah. Take that second T off Atlanta. It's Atlanta.
It's Atlanta. Oh, got you,
It's
got you, got
Atlanta. College Park.
you. I
Not
do love
College
Atlanta.
Park. College Park.
College Park. No, we do love that. And I love the New Orleans accent is great. I actually think, and people underestimate it, I really like the Mississippi accent. I like the
Really?
way
I don't know that one. I can't
see,
hear it.
you can barely hear it. It's the least heavy Southern accent. And if you listen to like historical Mississippi people like Medgar Evers and Murray Evers,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like they have an accent at all. It actually sounds it doesn't sound like a Southern accent. It's to me, they have the best diction of any Americans. Like
Yeah.
how New Yorkers speak, like, they have a very heavy accent. People, to me, Mississippi people speak with clarity.
Mm,
They enunciate their words. I'm talking about Black Mississippians. I
yeah.
go back and I look at these old videos, and there is nothing better than that old Mississippi Black. They are so clear. They are clear, like they say. They are
I can't wait to
clear.
see your documentary. I
The
cannot
hardest
wait.
accent to understand, I'm gonna tell you, my last thing I'll say, as far as Southern accents, the one that is to me the hardest to understand when they are really from there, Florida. That's the one I really need subtitles when they talking to me. I'm like,
I
that
did not
accent is
hear that
so
one
thick.
either.
It's thick.
Really?
Like, it's different. And it's very hard. That's the only accent that an American accent
Because
that's
you
hard for me to
lived in Florida.
Yes. And you always knew 90% of the people in South Florida are not from Florida because they do not have that accent. So
Right.
every so often you run into somebody with it. Like one time, Jason's sister, who again has a whole British accent, we went
I
out.
can't believe that. A sibling?
His sister, who's literally like 2 years different in age, and thick British accent. So we go out, right? And we go out, and she's cute and everything. So we're out, and this brother comes up to us at, I don't know if we were in a restaurant or whatever, and he starts speaking to her, and he says, something. Neither of us understood what he said. And this is one of the few times I'm encountering like a real thick Southern accent. Like, they're not Southern. Florida is its own planet. And he says something to her, and she said, "Pardon, I don't understand you. I don't. Can you say it again?" And then he said, and she said, "Sorry, pardon, I don't know what you mean. Sorry." She kept saying sorry, and then he just got pissed because he thought she was being like belittling, and pretending not to know what he was saying. But neither of us knew what he was saying. She looked at me, and I was like, I can't help you because I don't know what he said either. And
what was he saying?
I promise you, to this day, if Donald Trump's gulag people come to get me and say, "You're going to Gitmo," if you don't tell me what this man was saying, I'm going to Gitmo. Because to this day, and if I called her right now, she could not tell you what this man said. We walked away from that conversation in complete confusion. To this day, no idea.
That reminds me of the time, story time, because when I traveled to Augusta, Georgia, to interview the one and only James Brown when he was
Oh,
still leaving, may he rest in peace. Went to his house, and baby, let me tell you something. I prepared so well for that interview. I knew everything. I was so ready for this interview. This is when I was still at BET. When I tell you God is my witness, and I mean no disrespect, it is what it is. Baby, when he would answer a question, I would ask him a question, he would answer it. And you know how when someone answers a question, you listen, and sometimes a follow-up can come from
that's
that?
right.
Girl, I couldn't do nothing but say, okay. So next question.
And you said you gonna sort it out later because if God is my witness, you don't know what he said, right?
I didn't know what he was. I was making out bits and pieces, but it was really hard for me to understand what he was saying. But I loved him. I loved it, the opportunity. He was lovely. He was so sweet. Security was very tight with that whole situation. But yeah, I didn't know what that man was saying. God is my witness.
Back in the day, BET did an interview with Shabba Ranks. Shabba. And the same thing happened because I think it was Donnie Simpson interviewing him. I want to say it was Donnie Simpson. And they were having a conversation in which it was clear. It was clear, like they say. It was clear that Donnie had no idea what Shabba was saying. Shabba was talking. Now Shabba was talking. Donnie was asking him questions. They were not communicating.
They could have been in 2 different rooms.
Been in 2 different rooms. And Shabba was looking at him like, you don't know what I'm saying, do you? And Donnie looking at him like, I sure don't. Let's just keep this going. And they had they had touched and agreed, bloop, that they were going to keep that interview going, even though it was clear. Donnie had no idea what this Jamaican man was saying in his thick Jamaican accent. This is why I love us, because you know what? We will find a way.
Girl, I found a way. Girl, I was
Really
getting bits and pieces. I was like,
we gonna take what we can because we love us.
Okay. I just didn't want him to know. I did not want to be disrespectful because he
Donnie knew. They knew.
Shabba knew? Shabba.
I think he did. Because he just kept answering and Donnie kept looking at him like I believe it was Donnie Simpson. I want to believe. We need to reach out to Donnie and see if it was Donnie. I just remember watching the interview when Jason, because this is back when we were doing video dub plays. So we used to interview a lot of reggae artists, and so and we can understand what Jamaicans are saying. But I mean,
every time, let me just say, because there might be somebody who's new here. You brought it up. You're gonna have to sing the opening song.
The opening song
to your show. The show with Jason. Would you call it?
Video dub play.
Didn't y'all have the opening song or something? Like what would y'all say when you open the show?
We just said welcome to Video Dub Plate and played a lot of music.
No, there was something. I remember you saying something about like some kind of open or something. Wasn't there something that went along with the song, with the show?
There was not, but every so often we would get people to do dub plates for us. So we would be like, Shabba, do a dub plate. He said, well, video dub plate, video dub plate, and so they would do that for us. It wasn't a theme song. We just would get them to do a dub plate for us. Because if you're not familiar with dancehall music, a dub plate is when you get like Shaggy or Shabba or some artist, to like do but like sort of big you up, right? Like do a tribute to the show and use the name of the show in the tribute in their style. So we would get dub plates from all sorts of people. It was dope.
No,
we would get dub plates from all kinds of
people. You said one time, girl. Now I got to dig it up.
Dig it up.
When you were talking about this show and you start singing something, or maybe it was one of those dub plays that you sang one time. Because I was like, yes, this girl has done it all. She hosted
you have.
Show back
I never interviewed James Brown and probably wouldn't have also known what he was saying.
And flew to Jamaica with Michael Still and Leon. There's so many stories. So many stories.
Girl, the memoir is going to be dope. Whenever it's ready,
girl,
serve it up.
Let me tell you, it's crazy. So listen, we have 2 great guests coming up. I want to bring in one of our guests who's here.
Please.
And that is Rashad Robinson, who is a social change leader, strategist, author, speaker, and campaigner. He is amazing. He is always on your show or somebody's show, talking about justice and making change. So I love this brother. And Rashad, welcome to Read This, Read That.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you. It's good to
Hey,
see you
cousin.
both.
No, we try to book him, but he's a tough booking. But sometimes I beg. I just get on my text and I'm like,
He's
please,
busy.
come on.
Yeah.
He's out here trying to change the world.
He's busy.
You need about 2 clones, Rashad.
No, I don't think we could deal with more than one of me.
That would be too much DEI. That would be too much diversity.
Yeah,
too much diversity. So Rashad, I was just asking Joanne, and I'd love for you to just kind of join this conversation and chime in from your perspective. These early days of the Trump administration. I refuse to call him president, but the Trump administration, there's been so much. What to you in the last week, if you could say from your top 3 worst, right? The worst, the second worst, and the third worst. What, there's been so much. How would you rank it?
Well, I say at number 3, I would say it's probably what you all were just talking about. Elon Musk taking over the treasury, taking over the systems. This will be a pathway to steal. It will be a pathway. I think people sometimes think that maybe a billionaire doesn't want more money, but that's how they became billionaires. And so what we are going to see is sort of all sorts of uses of confidential information, but also we will find out later the stealing and the fleecing of the federal government, the access to trillions of dollars by someone who is unelected. I think at number 2, I would probably put sort of the scattershot of all these EOs and the lack of real infrastructure at the courts or in Congress to do anything about it, and the sort of surprise that we've seen. And then at number 1, because I'm an organizer and I'm a person who builds power, how flat-footed our side has been. And our inability to actually have the type of strategies necessary. And then some of the strategies that I see people sort of taken feel like folks have read pieces of history books, or they are cosplaying with actual strategies. And an Instagram account doesn't necessarily mean that overnight you can do a boycott. Reading a couple of news pieces or watching a documentary doesn't mean the march is actually a good strategy in this moment, or has and builds the type of leverage. And so, like everybody, I'm watching all these things. I'm looking at all these moments, and I'm trying to make sense of what is happening. And so sometimes some of these things come up, a call to boycott, a call to show up to a march, and we have FOMO. We're feeling like, are we doing the right thing? And the thing I want to urge us to is that as much as we need to push, and I want to talk some about it, we also need to build the type of campaigns that will have the leverage. What we're facing now is a result of what other people have been building on the other side for years. We're not going to dismantle that overnight, and we're certainly not going to win forward without actually having a clear strategy. And hopefully we can talk some about what that looks like, and I think some of the ingredients necessary for how we can view whether or not something is strategic or not.
That was my question. Are you surprised how ham-handed it's been, given the fact that they've literally had years, if not decades, to work up these plans?
Well, they've been building the energy with their base for years around these policies. So when they put them forward, they're not dealing with a whole lot of contention around it. They're not, you think about what might happen on the left if there's a policy proposal that puts out. There'd be years of fighting and disagreeing, and this period is not here, and this exclamation point needs to be on this particular policy. What they've done is they've worked through all of that, right? And so it's not just a set of policies on a paper, it's backed up with billions of dollars. It's not just backed up with white paper, it's backed up with green paper. It's also not just backed up with green paper, it's backed up with people willing to fight for those issues, people that are willing to see the connection. And so all of that, right, comes together. And then that means that they can make demands on things that may seem absolutely outrageous to us. And then they take their issues and they do something that I talk about as point and pivot. And, I've led many point and pivot campaigns, especially in the aftermath of Donald Trump being elected, where you point at something Trump has done, and I would point towards enablers, right? I'd point towards media, I'd point towards corporations. And what they've done is this point and pivot around DEI. So if something seems bad to the majority of Americans, like a plane crash, they will point and pivot at DEI, and they'll just keep pointing and pivoting over and over again, not at 15 different issues, at 1 or 2 issues, right? And then we have to spend our time saying, no, it's not DEI. We're spending our time defending DEI rather than actually talking about unearned opportunity, unearned access. The reason why planes go down is because morons and idiots get put in place because they are either friends with Donald Trump or perhaps they're family members of Donald Trump. Because that's what actually happens in Trump's America, is that people die. They die of COVID. They die of plane crashes. They die of all sorts of things because he is intent on putting people in positions of power as long as they are his friends or as long as they are perhaps his family members. And nobody wants to be skipped over, regardless of whether you're black, brown, yellow, white. No one wants to be skipped over by someone's kid. No one wants to be skipped over by the best friend when you've worked. And so this is not just a question of whether or not we create wraparounds to deal with the discrimination that Black and brown people face. What we are actually dealing with is the pathway to make sure that you actually have to be friends with the boss in order to have any opportunity. And regardless of who you are in America, we should be worried about that situation. It's fine for a small mom and pop business, right? It's small. It's fine if you have a mom and pop shop that you want to hire your kids. It's not fine when it comes to our tax dollars in the federal government.
How do we respond to point and pivot campaigns effectively? And that includes journalists in the media.
Yeah.
Well, Rashad, hang on 1 second. Before you answer that, hold that thought.
Yeah.
I just want to bring Erica Ford into the room. Erica Ford is, of course, a world-renowned activist and strategist when it comes to anti-violence work. She has a great new book out called Peace Doctor's Playbook. We're going to talk about that. But I just wanted to bring her into the conversation. Yes, look up that book, girl. But Rashad, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And thank you, Joy. I'm following in Erica's footsteps, in both of your footsteps, in that I have a book coming out later this year, early next year with Penguin Random House. And so I'm in the edit phase right now. And some of these stories will be in there in kind of deeper ways where I give people kind of some curriculum and strategy. But on the point and pivot, I think the answer is that the point and pivot is such a good strategy because there are 3 or 4 things that people are going to be able to hold in their mind around why there are problems. And one of the challenges that we have on our side is that we try to give people a list of 15. And then we spend our time talking about why their problems are not good or not good solutions instead of spending time talking about ours. And so on one hand, we should be talking about the things that we will do if we're in charge, right? How much did we not hear about things like healthcare during the past election? And we see that like Americans are willing to literally support someone who shot someone in the street over healthcare, right? And so we should have the list of things. And when things go wrong, we should be pointing towards the things that we want, because we don't need point and pivot is not just about the negative. Point and pivot is about the positive. And some of those things at the highest levels can speak to the ways in which corporations have completely taken over our government, have fleeced us. We can point and pivot, right? And so right now, there's a whole set of point and pivots. We can be pointing and pivot at unearned opportunity. We can be pivoting at unearned access. We can be pivoting at all the ways in which there is a sort of side door for people who are unqualified if they know the president, if they're family members of the president. And then point to a whole host of problems that we know will be coming down the pike, from tariffs and their impact on our bottom line personally, and sort of the economy of our states, to all sorts of other issues. But the point and pivot requires consistency. It requires the kind of campaign infrastructure that means that every day you are creating the drumbeat. I think one of the challenges we also have on our side is that we are waiting for democratic elected officials to lead us. And elected officials don't lead. Elected officials, at the very best, will be in the middle of our marches, right? They will show up. They will show up to our rallies and show up to our engagements. Now, there are some that are really great, and we can point to them. But most of them will show up once we've already left, once we've already moved things forward. And so we have to create the groundwork and the energy. That's what movement building looks like. Movements create the sort of landscape for elected officials to join us. Think about what the movements of 2019, 2018, and 2018, 2019, and 2020 did for what was on the stage during that primary. Now, we got Joe Biden, but the sort of issues that were talked about were a direct result of what movements did. And even things that Joe Biden had to do when he became president was take a whole bunch of pages out of Elizabeth Warren's playbook around corporations in terms of the Inflation Reduction Act, in terms of things that were happening in the banks. Now, don't praise the politicians for that. The narrative was changed because narrative is about what is acceptable, which is the floor, and what is possible, which is the ceiling. And it's our job to actually change the floor and change the ceiling so we can win more things. The politicians will always be inside of that floor and ceiling. Some will be closer to the ceiling, some will be closer to the floor, but that's where they will be. The right wing has lowered the floor through their movement building work. Now, we have to raise the floor, change what is acceptable, change what people are allowed to do, what they're allowed to say, how they're allowed to behave through the consequences that we create.
Well, and I want to bring Erica into this conversation because, and I appreciate all of that, Rashad. I'm so glad you both are here for this because you guys.
Oh, I wrote so much of it down.
I know. It's so, this is a master class.
I said, I'm taking notes on my phone.
So, Erica, let me ask you this though, because Rashad is saying, okay, we actually don't need elected officials as much as a lot of us think that we do, right? And you know all about organizing oh so well. I just wonder because what we're witnessing, in my opinion, I mean, I don't cover politics nearly as in depth as Joyanne does, but it feels like a dismantling of democracy. It feels like the government as we knew it in 4 years will not exist. And so it's like you've got that's crumbling right before our very eyes. But then for Black people specifically, right, we see that this white nationalism is at the root of everything that's happening there. So Black people, a lot of us, are panicking, because at the root of it, it feels it is racism. So what advice do you have for Black people? We're wondering, should we boycott? Should we march? Should we we're all over the place. And I think that's what they want, right? They want the chaos within our community. We're infighting about how we should boycott Target. Tabitha Brown took some shots because of all of this. It's been a mess within our own community. How do we get it together? Black people specifically. What would you say to that? And welcome to Read This, Read That.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a triumph couple of days and in direct experience of the shift in our society, right? For me personally. And so, but when I was listening to you talk, and you were talking about all the people at a different level and, how we get to that level and who's the leader. And, as all politics are local, all organizing is local. Right. And so we're all starting where we are. And so if there's a Walmart in our area, a Lowe's if any of these institutions that your community or you personally, right? Because the first thing starts with you, right? Yeah. What are you willing to sacrifice? What is your end game? What is your first foot into the that is why I wrote the Peace Doctors Playbook, not trying to sell a book. This is why I wrote it, because we have to be intentional. We can't just wake up on Monday and think that, okay, it's Monday, I'm ready for Monday. No, what does your week look like in this world? because things don't look the same anymore.
I think the other piece of it, Erica, is that for a lot of Black people, typically the federal government has been the cavalry. And, if you look throughout, history, it's either been the Supreme Court, saying that they went wrong with Plessy and then fixed it with Brown versus Board, or it's been, the Congress passing the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, or Lyndon Johnson enacting the Great Society. Like, I feel like as Black folks, we've generally been very federally focused. And so I think to Jackie's point, it's particularly traumatic and traumatizing to see the federal government be dismantled. Because for a lot of Black folks, they live in a place like Louisiana or Mississippi or South Carolina or Florida, where your state government is already Project 2025, where you've already been living with very few voting rights, with them taking away free preschool like they did in Tennessee, with them opening up gun rights, and saying they would rather, children be hungry than be safe from being slaughtered in 4th grade. Like, your state is already making you be a second or third class citizen. So all you really had was the federal government. Yeah. So I wonder if you could speak to the kind of despair that we're seeing and what the response, or the sort of smart response, if you can answer, and then even Rashad weigh in, when you're seeing federal government collapse, because that is what we're seeing. If this were happening in another country, we'd be saying we were watching a coup happen. Right. If it was any other country but America, we'd be saying, oh, a coup happened in the last 10 days. No. So what do you say to people who see the only thing they believed could save them collapse?
Right. Because can we rely on the police? Yeah. Can we rely on the FBI? Can we rely on the justice system? You know what I mean? Who's going to defend us? When things go left, if all of these things are being dismantled.
You know why? For me, things been going left every day, right? There's a group of people in this world, things ain't never been right. You're talking about things for a human being, right? An American citizen had to have a federal law instituted to give them the right to do X, Y, Z. First of all, that's off balance right there. That's off balance right there, right? And so let's come closer together as a people, right? Let's come closer together as a people. All of us are not going to come closer together, right? And there's so many examples, but all politics starts with you, right? There's no leader coming to save you. What are you going to do? And then there's so many organizations that exist that people become part of. The Dream Defenders is organizing. We're part of the Black and Brown Peace Consortium that's organizing around, you talked about gun safety and gun laws and just keeping our communities safe. A lot of people are on the front line in your community. When you talk about Tennessee and all of those different places, people have been afraid every day, right? And so the thing is, you can't be afraid because the boogeyman been there. They just taking off their mask. They just taking off their mask now and showing you their face. And so now you have to organize. And like, I can open up to a page and it will say what it will say. When you've got nothing left, look what it says. When you've got nothing left, tap in. Let your resilience and tenacity show up, right? Because it is us. We got to save our money. We got to protect. We got to know that, as you said, the police might not come. They don't come for a lot of people to protect them anyway. So you got to be disciplined. You got to keep your family disciplined. You got to check your children's heart. You got to check their bags. You got to talk to them about what is happening in the world. You got to organize your house. Then you organize your block. Then you organize your community. We got to go back to the old school. Right? Because some of us got too comfortable. And we thought we was free.
That part.
See, we thought we was free because we was
that proximity to whiteness
on the shelves of Target, right? And so we're not. We're pawns in a game that is sending our children to a prison industrial complex or to jail. That's the choice for most of our children. And so, like, let's step back and take a breath. And then get centered. right? You could join me, but I don't promote the concept of leaders, because if they come and kill me, then what you gonna do? Stop moving, right? They've killed so many of our leaders. We have to organize in silence.
Mm-hmm.
We have to begin to organize and vote some of these people out, right? We got to vote some of these people out. We might have to move to some cities, right? We got to be smart. We got to be intentional. We got to be organized. And those who have answers, like execute, right? Because don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the leader. Don't wait till your money's right? Don't wait till your education level is right? You got to read. You got to study, read, and read, right? But we got to be on point, right? Because Rashad knows, right? Rashad was the head of an organization and now he's not, right? There's a lot of people that had organizations and now they don't, right? Because intentionally they're shutting down organizations or stopping people, or we're misstepping, right? That viral video of me screaming with the police, people will say, that's not the peace doctor, right? They took me off my square. They could have killed me. They could have killed my staff because I wasn't disciplined, right? And I'm not saying don't get angry, don't fight back, but you gotta be smart. That's an army. They got guns, they got barrels. We don't even have an organized. We're not ready for that.
Rashad, can you weigh in here? Just because I think that is sort of the big question, is that people are just feeling lost about step one, about what they can do tomorrow to try to at least feel a little bit more centered and safe.
Yeah, I think that people are going to probably feel lost for a little bit of time, because I think the right campaigns are going to emerge. This is a result. I really appreciate what Erica said about the kind of comfort, right? I think about how many DEI professionals and leaders, through campaigns I may have been running on corporations, told me, Rashad, you'll get way more, with us if you bring honey rather than, that vinegar in your campaign. I have a direct relationship with my CEO. We are in the C-suite. We are doing, I have a list of the DEI folks who talked about how secure the work that they were doing, how it was protected, right? When we were pushing them and challenging them to make the work more clear back in 2019 and 2020 and 2021, when I created campaigns that actually asked them to go beyond sort of just words, but actually put in very clear infrastructure. And what we ended up getting in some results was things in a lot of places that were trainings on interpersonal relationships and things like that like no microaggressions or things like that actually can be challenged, right? When people started, we sometimes told people who were trying to understand or learn that they actually couldn't speak up if they weren't a woman, or they weren't Black, or they weren't queer, and in some of those regards, we didn't build an infrastructure that was protected. And I don't think it's wrong of us to interrogate things that went wrong or things that weren't perfect, and ways in which when we do come back, because a lot of this is about tides that shift. And my hope is that we build the infrastructure so the tide comes back our way. But make no mistake, right? A lot of companies, a lot of infrastructure made all sorts of statements in after the murder of Trayvon Martin. And then some of them started going away. And then we saw more that had made statements and had engaged and started launching offices after Ferguson and the murder of Mike Brown. And we saw more in 2020. And each time we had a larger swing towards us and we had a larger kind of swing away from us. But things were left in its place. And hopefully what we will understand is that in none of those situations was there a single leader. And I don't think even the stories of the 60s are a story of the single leader. They're stories of many leaders. Now, movements do need symbols, and history needs symbols. So sometimes the historical record is full of more of symbolism around a single leader leading us, and not all of the ways in which a variety of strategies were under contention and people were fighting and engaging to actually figure out what went forward. That many things were put forward and something emerged, something captured the energy, and something will capture people's energy. And that is why those of us who build campaigns, those of us who develop frameworks have to be doing that work now. And we have to be doing that work not always in the spotlight, not always to launch it tomorrow, that we have to build those campaigns so that they are ready for the moments that actually capture people's energy. The reason why I told that story about the credit cards and the quick to counsel that actually led to a whole upswing and powered our energy through that 22 election, where we were actually able to take back seats. We were able to win district attorney races around the country. And you think about the district attorney work and the work around criminal justice. Since 2008, there are 24% less people incarcerated. There are 45% less Black men incarcerated. And this is not just in New York and California. We've seen drops in Texas and South Carolina and Oklahoma, double-digit percentage drops. And that is a result of movements powering wins along the way. And it's not always the thing that gets the front page of the newspaper, but it's that work that has to happen along the way so that you give people the mental framework that they can fight, that they can win along the way. And so in this moment, we have to win things at the local level to actually prove why our side should be leading in the first place. We have to hold enablers accountable so that there's actually consequences, that it's not easy to side with this administration, that the bottom line that you think you're going to get is going to come with consequences, not just rewards. And then along the way, we have to create frameworks for people to see wins along the way. So more and more people will feel like they can do something, that they can win something, that they can achieve something.
I just wanted to tap on to what you just said, because when Biden came into office, Biden said he was only going to put $800 million in community violence intervention. And so we organized and we worked and we had a champion with Ambassador Rice, and we were able to get him to invest over $32 billion, which is not a lot of money in comparison to the $367 trillion they sent to Ukraine. But still, the stuff that Rashad is talking about, those six, is because of those frontline workers working with that population and wrapping around services and support that led to them not going to jail or coming out of jail and not going back to jail, helping strengthen the families. And so it's real work. And so if there's something like a target that people are, it's an ecosystem in every community of people doing work. We have to form those local ecosystems of and Rashad is a campaign. He does it like, who are the people on the ground? And we talked about this, right? We talked about connecting the people in his field and his work to the people on the ground so that they could lift the voices of the people who are just working every day and don't have time. Then when you look at a target campaign, target, right? Not 15 things, because then we won't impact in the massive kind of way if we just target, right? And it's a catchy, it's simple, right? And if Target gets that direct breaking of their bank, then everybody else is going to fall in line, right? And if they don't, then we can move to the next one. But we should target one institution, right? Like how they're saying shop at Costco's, because Costco's didn't do that. We should, let's stop Target.
That there it is right there, target. But let me ask you guys this, because you both brought up elected officials, and you're both saying, listen, we shouldn't focus so much on elected officials. We need to do our own work. I hear you, but it does matter who's in office. And Black people worked hard to get Biden into office. We worked hard behind the campaign of Kamala. Just because you didn't win the race, Kamala Harris, we still stood behind you as a leader. Where are you? Just because you didn't win, right? It doesn't mean you have to disappear. Half of the country, more than half of the country, voted for this woman, supported her. Democracy is dismantling before our very eyes. Where's Barack Obama? I don't care if he served 2 terms and then he wants to just retire and go work in Hollywood at Netflix and create documentaries and shows. this is the time that everybody needs to get in this. I think if you're planning in the Democratic Party, if you're planning on running in 2028, we need to hear from you now, right? I think we still, and we need to have a serious conversation about the Black community and our support of the Democratic Party. I don't think leaving the Democratic Party is the answer, but we always wait until 3 months before the election to say, hey, we want this and we want that. We should start with that now. I still feel like elected officials need to be part of this strategy in some way. I do agree that it begins with us and that starting locally is smart. But I just feel like we should hold their feet to the fire. Where are they?
If I could just say one thing, and I definitely want to let you all weigh in. The only counter I would do to that is that at the moment, we have people who we're paying to respond to this. They are members of Congress who have the actual federal authority over the budget that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are seizing from them. We have members of Congress whose job it is to guard their own authorities and to guard their own constitutional prerogatives. So before I need Kamala Harris to stop moisturizing and watching Netflix and doing whatever she's doing because she is still recovering from that before I need that lady who no longer works for me, I need the people who work for me to do something. So I want to start with you, Rashad, and I know that you guys were a 501c3, so you guys didn't get involved in partisan politics.
Oh, no. Color of Change was a 501c4 and had a.
Oh, you are C4. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I mean, because my thing is, and I've been texting with people like this, and I'm as frustrated as Jackie is about the kind of sort of paralysis. I mean, I'm not surprised by the Republicans, but they too should be guarding their own power to make budgets. They are also constitutional authorities and actors who should be trying to say, hey, we're the ones who spend the money, Elon. You don't even work here. Or you don't even go here. Okay. This ain't even your school. Why are you here? But they're not. But I don't understand. Let's talk about some of the things they could be doing. I've talked to a few legal voices who've said Congress could sue. They could file a class action lawsuit on behalf of each of their states, the way that those 22 states did. And they were successful in at least temporarily forcing the federal government to undo that freeze. They were successful because they got together and sued. States are now doing almost all the legwork here. Yeah. Where is Congress, Rashad? What could they be doing?
Well,
and not issuing statements, because issuing statements is dumb.
I think that they are going to continue to issue statements and seem like they're doing something.
And get Cory Booker to teach them how to go on TikTok. It's like, I love Cory. And he's great on social, but that's not it. That ain't it.
It's ridiculous. I mean, we watched how the generational shifts even in the leadership fights, in the leadership battles, how they sort of blocked some of their best communicators from actually having more power. We watched all of that.
Jasmine, AOC, the people who should be leading, they're like, nope, wait your turn. When you're 68, it'll be your turn.
It'll be your turn. And when no one's paying attention to you anymore. Look, this is why I was saying before that it's really important for movements to build the space and the infrastructure that forces new things. Because quite frankly, I just, once again, am not going to expect elected officials. I'm not going to expect those that go through this process and the rules of moving up in Congress to suddenly change their stripes. What we have to do is we have to create the incentive structure for them to know that they're going to be there. Congress always comes late to every issue. The public always moves further along, and we have to actually move the public and create the consequences, whether it's in primaries, whether it's we have to create the rewards, whether it's in primaries or general elections. That is how you actually move things along, because I think the expectation, and here's what Donald Trump is a very unique character, very unique compared to even the Republicans, right? He's a change the rules candidate. And you don't get a lot of change the rules candidate. You get change candidates. You get change candidates. George Bush is a change candidate. Mitt Romney, Barack Obama. They're all change candidates. They operate within a certain type of framework. And that's what allows them to raise money from corporations. That allows them to have sort of enough general support from the infrastructure to be considered a viable candidate. I remember having being in a meeting with other civil rights leaders in the president towards the end of his term, and the Democratic Party had just started taking lobbyist money again. And in particular, lobbyist money from private prisons and others. And I remember pushing the president on that, saying like, we were meeting about a bunch of things. A bunch of other civil rights leaders were in the room. And I was like, the idea that you're back taking lobbyists and corporate money as Democratic Party is a problem. And then he said, you know what you should be doing? You should be working to change Citizens United. And I looked at him like he was crazy. And he knew that it was, I mean, he's a smart man. So he knew, and I could see Valerie Jarrett like being like, you don't get a follow-up. But then he came right back. He came right back again because he knew the answer wasn't sufficient. And then he said, well, I won my last election and I was outspent. The last election that he won was against Romney and I was outspent. And I said, well, that's not the point, sir. The point was that it changed the range of debate. All of that corporate money changes what was acceptable and what was possible inside of that conversation. It limits what we can talk about and who gets to talk about things. And he was also an incumbent, so that also meant that he was, Trump might have very well won in 2020 if it wasn't for COVID. And so the thing that I think is really important for all of us to remember, that as long as we are in resistance, not in opposition, resistance movements lose all around the world. Opposition movements actually have a clear set of policies. Opposition movements actually uplift people that should be running HUD and should be running the education department. And we start putting energy and infrastructure and narrative power behind those leaders. And we start helping them sort of communicate whether or not they're elected right now or not. And we create the incentive because elected officials are simply following what they think sort of the landscape is. And to call them like the leaders of our movement actually just doesn't really jive with how history and how social changes happen, especially for Black people. Anytime Black people have won big things, it has not been because elected officials made it possible.
We also can't have an elephant in the room that there were several elected officials who did not come back to Congress because they put millions of dollars in their race and got them out of office, right? And so, and historically, these elected officials that we're looking for have not really been our voice in terms of our issues. They've not been in the lead. They give the same money to the same institutions to help them in their races. They don't focus on a certain group of people, right? And so how do you expect us to win in a large sense of a way of a people like this doesn't impact them? It doesn't impact them. And if it's not impacting their votes and their budget, because they have a group of people that's going to vote for them no matter what, right? And until we're ready to really make turn this thing upside down and get all of those folks out of office that are not doing anything anymore and allow them to be statesmen and give leadership to a new group of people, we're going to have the same thing because they've been doing the same thing for a number of years.
And right, so but that's what we got to do. That's what we got to do. We got to turn this thing upside down.
But the right-wing movements actually created consequences for their elected officials, and they drove a movement that actually forced folks to do the things that they didn't want to do, whether it was Mitch McConnell or whoever else. They led movements that made that we're on the outside being like, oh, like they can't elect a speaker. But in the process, what they are doing is creating the context for how that speaker will actually behave.
Right. And the limit.
Yes.
I'll just want to say this, the movement you're talking about, and that I think, and I talk about this a lot with my team, that we don't study enough. And I think that we didn't understand enough when it was happening in real time is the Tea Party movement. Because what you're talking about is that when Barack Obama got elected, it sent shockwaves through the right, through the American right. And when he got reelected, the shockwaves were even more severe. It's the reason that Shelby versus Holder, which if you talk to Eric Holder, he only wants it called Shelby. He doesn't want his name attached to it. But I mean, they did Shelby versus Holder because they said not only did this black man get elected, he got elected twice, and he got elected specifically on the idea of universal health care, right? And then when he ran for reelection again, they realized he would be a lame duck president who might even go further. And he did go further, DACA, right? And do things that went above and beyond. Again, people think executive orders, Emancipation Proclamation, DACA, Executive Order 12622112246, by Lyndon Johnson, that actually created equal opportunity that Donald Trump just overturned in stripping equal opportunity in federal hiring. Like these executive orders, Harry Truman desegregated the military. That was an executive order, right? So executive orders can be truly powerful, and they fear the idea that this man, this liberal-ish, he's more of a moderate, but to them, he's like a raging Marxist as far as they're concerned, was going to be a black incumbent. And one of the things I did, talk to a professor when I did my Trump book, a South African professor told me that the South African Conservative Party reached out to Republicans and said, you're going to lose your country to black people if you don't, this man getting reelected is your wake-up call. You need to wake up. And the Tea Party movement, people forget, looked like a grassroots movement, to your point, and I think, Erica, and to your point, Rashad, it looked and felt and acted like a grassroots movement. But what it was a small group of billionaires, including the Koch brothers, funding what looked like a grassroots movement, keying on the easiest thing to pivot on in America, race, and getting people to believe that the black president, remember they had monkey dolls of him, ape dolls of him, saying he's a Kenyan, and hanging him in effigy, and focusing on healthcare being basically reparations. When in fact, the whole start of the Tea Party movement was that the banks were scared that Obama was going to do cram down. He was going to force banks to take what you owe on your bank, not what you fully owe on your mortgage. If your mortgage was underwater, you're only getting what the house is worth. That's cram down. And he had promised civil rights organizations, maybe even Color of Change, that he was going to do it. And when he really was about to do it, that's when that Chicago mercantile floor, the mercantile floor Tea Party thing happened. And then the Koch brothers caught onto that fast and said, aha, here's what we can do. They pivoted, to your point and pivot. They pivoted it off of something that was unpopular, right? Which is every American was down with cram down. They were like, wait, I owe $1 million, but my house is only worth $200,000. Yeah, I'll pay back the $200,000. Everybody would have wanted that, white, black, and indifferent. But they were like, healthcare is reparations. It's all for blacks. Get them, right? And the Tea Party movement is the basis of MAGA. People need to remember, Marco Rubio was not Tea Party until suddenly he joined. Rand Paul, Tea Party. The Tea Party's not just in the House, it's in the Senate. Most of those senators and the few holdovers of the old school, the Mitt Romneys, they eventually just one by one left. Because when MAGA took the Tea Party and made it personality cult driven around Trump, it exploded. Republicans cannot pivot off of Trump, even if they hate him. They cannot pivot off
the power of movements.
Yeah, but let me get in here and talk about the fact that, but we can use all of that history, right? All of that. We got to figure out what we're doing now. And the reason why I brought up Kamala, and yes, I want her to be moisturized and well rested too, is because what we saw when she was campaigning was this ability to mobilize in record numbers, right? I don't want to stress that woman out anymore. She doesn't owe me anything, but there's something there, right? We do need elected officials in some kind of way. And all I'm saying is, I don't want her to just disappear. Her candidacy meant something. Just like we love Michelle Obama, we love Kamala. Can you imagine if Kamala was out here now talking about saving democracy, still in the fight, on social media, giving speeches, not campaigning, take that word out of it. But this is a serious matter, as our friends over at Alpha Kappa Alpha always say. This is serious.
I fear, because I know that the left is not good at narrative, and the Democrats aren't good at narrative. If Kamala was out there, the whole focus of attention would be on Kamala. the focus of the media's attention would be on what she's saying. The focus of the activist community would be on critiquing whether she's saying it right, whether she's saying it good enough, whether she's left enough, whether she's moderate enough. Suddenly she would suck all the oxygen out of the room. And we would now be having a conversation about Kamala rather than about Elon Musk and Trump. That's just my
not if we get the Kamala that's not running for office. Not that if we get the Kamala that's not afraid to say motherfucker out loud. Not that if we get the Kamala that's not running for anything. She has nothing to lose.
She's
all
we would talk about is Kamala Harris.
I really like Kamala. I've known her for a long time. My district attorney work and other work really intersected, and in some ways, she was one of the first district attorneys to even walk up to the line of calling themselves a progressive prosecutor. So I have a lot of respect and appreciation for how she ran the campaign. And I will say in 2020, when Hillary Clinton lost, she built something called Onward Together. And what she did was she took her campaign infrastructure and she used it to support next generation infrastructure and organizations and leaders. And she helped to kind of introduce organizations like the organization I used to run, Color of Change, other organizations to her donor base, to folks who were disillusioned by what had happened, and helped a lot of folks run campaigns, not because she was a campaign architect. She was an elected official. She wasn't an opposition leader. And Kamala Harris is not an opposition leader. Kamala Harris is an elected official. She's served inside of branches of government. And I think that we have to just make sure that we are leveraging and utilizing people in their lane, in their skill set, inside of, and I think one of the challenges that we had with President Obama was that people sometimes mistook him for being our movement leader and not our elected official. They expected him for being the leader of Black America when he couldn't be the leader for Black America. He was the leader of this, he was the leader of the state. And that meant Black America actually had to hold him accountable and push him. And I remember being in rooms with him where people spent 45 minutes of the hour and a half we had telling him how proud they were of him and how inspiring he was when he got off planes with his family and all of that, instead of spending time actually pushing and challenging. So the people who did push and challenge, it was easy sometimes to kind of excommunicate them or say that they weren't appreciative or that they were operating outside of. It happened to Black journalists who would sometimes push or ask questions, and then they weren't actually. It happened to Maxine Waters. It happened to a lot of folks because there was a protective tissue around. And I just want to make sure that I don't actually blame a protected tissue around an elected official. You actually, that's part of the job, to make sure that they can actually do the work. But when you mistake them for being the leader of your movement, when you mistake them for being the leader of the movement, then you start doing the work of protecting them. And that becomes the problem. My job was never to protect him. My job was to actually fight for Black people. And if you get tricked into thinking that your job is to protect Barack Obama, then you actually don't truly help President Obama. The job is to be further out front than Obama can be, that you're tilling the soil, creating the space so that your elected officials that you support can step into that landscape and actually benefit from the work that's been done. And so that is why I think in this opposition moment, it's going to be really insufficient to pull up an elected official. Maybe there are definitely some that are we mentioned AOC, we mentioned Jasmine Crockett, we mentioned folks who definitely have a way of capturing energy and attention. There are some folks who are no longer in Congress. There are other folks out there. But what I'm saying is that there's a certain job for an elected official. And it's to pass laws. And then there are jobs for movement leaders.
She's not an elected official right now.
No, but he's still an elected official in terms of what he's saying. His whole being, he never stepped out of that framework, right? Yeah. And one of the things that we have, that Trump has some knutzes that some people need to learn to get, right? Because the other thing is, Trump is going to do what Trump wants to do. A lot of these elected officials, the people you're talking about in the movement, they're not going to stand with them. Police ran into my office the other day. How many elected officials is willing to stand with me right now? Right? So some of these same elected officials, when you're talking about a movement, that you can't bring them, because that's not their job. They're not going to do it. You're going to have more inner fighting than you're going to have success. And so as we talk about lanes, let them, and that's their job. I know that is the lane. They should be advocating for us and help us
Yes.
push it forward. We know, but unfortunately, it's not a reality, right? And so we'll waste energy trying to get what they do. What they're very good at, though, is jumping on the bandwagon for a winning team, right? So let's target, let's shut it down. And then they will be like, I started that and I'm here. And then let's move to Walmart because they feel the power, right? But we can't look for them. And if they're not being successful, how do we get some new folks in that will be aggressive enough to stand for the movement and push it and lead it and understand that their job is representation, not their job. Like some of them think that their job is their job, which is whatever they call it, that, but it's representing the people in their district, all of the people. Because a lot of times, Rashad is talking about one group of people in all reality, right? There's these people who are in this political realm and they push political dollars and they run campaigns and they do all of this and they get those monies. When you talk about the person funded the Tea Party, that's the key point. They funded them and they built that Tea Party. When the folks funded the Black Lives Matter thing, we and them started to, and not we as in me, but people started to tear down everything about them, right? Instead of like having inside meetings and building that movement, because the movement was monumental and big, right? And so how do but they were able to destabilize and crush that movement. And so you're talking about now, where's the movement? It's crushed. And that movement built DEI. And so now that the pressure is no longer there and people are scared to really step up because they'll get canceled by their own people, then they're not using that individual power voice that you're looking for to push things forward, right?
Yeah.
Because so how do we rebuild? You start local. You start intentional.
I want to make sure that we make time to talk about Erica's new book, because it's so important when you talk about starting local and starting with you, because I do think that there needs to be something said to the millions of Black people, Black Americans right now who feel very stressed. And Erica, the book that you have, really, your new book talks about how we need to prepare. We need to organize our lives ourselves within to prepare to organize.
That's right.
So just kind of talk about what advice you would give us based on the research that you've done and what you went through, and this book on how we can get ready for this fight that's ahead.
And I just opened it again and it says there's no shortcuts to meaningful success. And what you're talking about is a shortcut, Jackie. I'm sorry. And we can't take that, because in order to sustain a movement, the people have to be part of it, right? And the people have to see the power. And so what am I doing? Rashad, and I'm sorry to use you as an example, but that is an example, right? How do we work with Rashad? How do we have our own internal compliance? So we're looking at ourselves and we're fixing things in real time, right? And we're dealing with the people, because people there's a lot of companies are having people saying, I don't want that person anymore. And so they're organizing in the thing and so stay on your point, right? Stay on your point. Be conscious about who's around you. Be conscious about your words. Be conscious about how you're organizing your family. If you want your son or your elected official to do something for you, how is it that you're going to get them to do that? So, for example, me, right? I'm going to use me as an example. I would curse out elected officials all the time because they weren't doing what they were supposed to. Was that the best result? I could be getting, and making them feel bad, but would they now support me? Because that's the end goal, right? So I had to change how the police on site, we were fighting, right? They had a picture of me and said, get her first, because she's going to ignite the rest of the movement, right? And so now I'm a target. So I had to shift how I related to them, because they weren't going to shift how they related to me. And so then I was able to organize a task force, organize a pilot. And so now there's a different protocol on how we relate to each other, even though they violated it the other day. But I had to be intentional, right? So we're on a field and we're trying to win, right? Win back DEI, win back people in office, win back our rights that we should, and that whole thing is another conversation, because we shouldn't be in a constitution. We should just be. Right? Why do they have to keep voting for us to have a right to vote? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well, we could keep this conversation going with the two of you for a long time. We've been going for a long time. We're gonna put it on pause for now and have both of you back, because it's definitely a conversation that needs to continue. And maybe we'll invite Kamala to be a part of the next conversation with the four of us.
I told you she don't have time. She watching Netflix and moisturizing.
Yes.
Well, Rashad Robinson,
She's probably watching Later Daters, which is the great contribution of our forever
Michelle Obama's show.
Michelle Obama, which if you have not watched it, I strongly suggest you try.
I do. It's so good.
Very good for the spirit.
But Rashad Robinson, Erica Ford, thank you so much for coming on Read This, Read That, and being a part of this conversation. To be continued is all I can say. There's a lot of work ahead.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Woo, girl, we could keep going.
I mean, let me see if I can make my screen. I have to full screen my screen again. But yes, we easily could, but we're not going to. You know why? Because
because it's Sunday.
Time is finite. Now you need to leave Kamala alone. Leave Kamala by. Let her live.
Listen, I love Kamala, and this is to me a celebration of her. It's a credit to her. Listen, we need everybody. I don't think that anybody right now, it'd be one thing if you had somebody reasonable on the other side that was now occupying the White House. This is someone who is, out of his mind. This is the first days of it. And I'm not saying she has to come back and be the leader and be the one. Let her and Hillary Clinton and, let them deal with what they can deal with inside. Look, to me, there is something that she can contribute.
I'm just telling you.
And if she's not at the center of it, she doesn't have to be.
It's all they would talk about. I'm telling you, it would pivot the whole story off message.
What story? We're not even.
All we will be talking about
They're
is
already controlling the narrative.
But I mean, this would be
listen, there to me, it would not. It's no different than Michelle Obama.
It would be all they talk about.
Michelle
It'll be the whole story.
Michelle wrote books, went on tours. I'd like to see Kamala. Hillary Clinton did the same thing. Go on tour, write a book, but talk about it. Be a part of the conversation. Don't just disappear. Yeah. I think she still needs to be in the atmosphere in some kind of way, because what is going on right now is scary. It's crazy. And we need everybody. It's just like
we need our Mamala. We got problems and we need Mamala.
We need
Where Mamala at? Mamala went out. Mamala leave Mamala alone.
No, get back in here. Come on, girl. Obama too. Come on, Michelle. I want them all.
Leave them people alone.
No, get back. All right. Well, that does it for this week's episode of Read This, Read That. We appreciate you all tuning in. Please follow our guest. We'll put their we'll tag them and put their hashtags, and not their hashtags, but we'll tell you where to find them when we post this show.
And please do follow Read This, Read That on all the socials. Read This, Read That on Instagram. We know Mark Zuckerberg. We get it, but we're still on there for now. We're not on the other one. You can also follow us on our Substack. You can also follow us. Are we on Blue Sky yet? Have we joined Blue Sky yet?
Yes, we are on Blue Sky.
We are on Blue Sky. Read This, Read That on Blue Sky. All the things, just follow
Fan base. We are everywhere. Follow us, but be sure where we are right now that you like on YouTube.
Yes.
And wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. We love to hear from you.
We love to hear from you. Comment, like, subscribe. Tell us whether or not I'm right or Jackie's wrong. Either one of those answers is appropriate. And you can also follow Vegan Sexy Cool at all the Vegan Sexy Cool places, including on IG, so you can be vegan and sexy and cool all at the same time.
Yes.
Because you want to be all three. Otherwise, you're just eating complicated food without being sexy and cool.
Not true. You can be vegan without being sexy and cool, but why not be all three? Why not be all three?
Porque no los tres?
And listen, if you want to weigh in on who's right and wrong about Kamala, you can do that. But more importantly, weigh in on how you're feeling about everything that's going on right now, whether if you're part of the 92%, if you're still laying back and relaxing and you don't want to be bothered, or if you feel like with everything going on, it's time to jump into this fight, which I hope is where you are, because we don't have time to be sitting around.
She ain't letting nobody stay home. Not Kamala, not Obama, not Michelle, not you.
These people are crazy. They're out here doing Nazi salutes and kikiing with white nationalists around the world. No, it's crazy. We got to get it together. But while you're getting it together, when you do watch the news, and hopefully you're doing it in a limited way, be sure to tune into the Readout on MSNBC every Monday through Friday on MSNBC.
Where we will not be compelling, or we will not be demanding that Kamala Harris do a goddamn thing.
No, I want her back because I love her and we need her. I believe in her. Come on, Stacey Abrams, Keisha Lance Bottoms is talking about running for governor of Georgia. I'm like, yes, let's go.
I'm down for that. Come on, Keisha.
Yeah, come on. Let's
Keisha.
Go. We need everybody.
By the way,
we need the Black women Avengers. Let's go.
One.
Yes.
Kamala Harris. It's all the fabulous photos from her time as vice president and her historic moments that she had. And also the forward is written by me.
By you. And there should be some blank pages in the back so we can talk about what she's going to do now moving forward to be part of the movement.
You can write all those back here in the back. Write
all
your
right,
to-do list for Kamala, your honey-do list.
All right, you guys. Thank you so much. Until next time. Bye.
Goodbye.